He is the creative director of one of the most powerful fashion houses on the planet. He does not design for just anyone. And yet, on the night of July 17th, in the middle of Paris, Jonathan Anderson put his own hands into building something that existed for exactly one person. Not a supermodel, not a Hollywood A-lister, a K-pop idol named Jimin. And by the time that stage light hit him, the internet had already stopped talking about anything else. If you are new here, welcome, because you picked the perfect video to click on. This channel breaks down the biggest BTS moments as they happen, in real time, with zero fluff and zero guessing. So if you want to actually understand what just happened in Paris, and why fashion insiders are calling it one of the biggest crossover moments of the year, stay with me for the next few minutes, because I promise you, it gets bigger than you think. And if you're already part of this channel, hit that subscribe button right now, because we are about to go deep. Let's set the scene first, because context is everything here. BTS is in the middle of the European leg of their ARIRANG World Tour, their first world tour together as a full group of 7 in years. This is not a small comeback lap. This is the tour that has been breaking records city after city, stop after stop, and every single stadium show has come with its own headline-worthy moment. Madrid, where the group performed for the first time ever in Spain. Brussels, where thousands of fans packed King Baudouin Stadium. London, where they filled Tottenham Hotspur Stadium for 2 nights and left even skeptical critics won over. Munich, where BTS played their first ever shows in Germany at Allianz Arena. And now, the finale of the European run, 2 nights at Stade de France in Paris, July 17th and 18th. Stade de France is not a small venue. We are talking about one of the largest stadiums in Europe, a venue that has hosted World Cup finals and Olympic ceremonies, a stage reserved for the biggest events on the planet. That is the size of the stage BTS just conquered, and that is the size of the moment we're talking about here. This wasn't a small showcase or an intimate fashion event tucked away from cameras. This was tens of thousands of fans, live, in one of the most iconic stadiums in the world, watching BTS close out their European leg in the most important fashion capital on the planet. And on that stage, opening the show was Jimin, dressed head to toe in something that had never existed before that night, something built for him, and for that night only. Now here is where it gets interesting. Jimin didn't just wear Dior. Plenty of celebrities wear Dior. What happened in Paris was different, because the outfit was custom-built, designed specifically for him by Jonathan Anderson himself. If that name doesn't ring a bell yet, let me explain why fashion people are losing their minds over this. Jonathan Anderson is currently the creative director of Dior Men's, one of the most influential and closely watched positions in the entire fashion industry. This is a job title that fashion journalists spend entire careers analyzing. Every collection he releases gets picked apart in magazines, on runway broadcasts, and across every major fashion publication on Earth, because the decisions he makes ripple across the entire industry. Before Dior, he built his reputation at Loewe, where he turned a relatively quiet Spanish heritage brand into one of the most talked-about labels on Earth, known for bold, sculptural, boundary-pushing design. Under his direction, Loewe went from a brand most casual shoppers barely recognized to one of the most awarded and most referenced fashion houses of the decade. He also runs his own label, JW Anderson, which has built its identity on taking risks that bigger, safer brands wouldn't dare touch. This is a designer whose work ends up in museum exhibitions, whose runway shows get dissected by fashion critics line by line, frame by frame. When Dior brought him in to lead its menswear direction, it was treated as one of the biggest appointments in the entire luxury industry that year. So when someone at that level chooses to build something specifically for you, that is not a marketing favor. That is not a stylist grabbing something off a rack and calling it a collaboration. That is a statement made by one of the most scrutinized creative minds in fashion, using his own name and his own design language to dress one specific artist for one specific night. So think about what it means that Jonathan Anderson chose Jimin as the person to open BTS's biggest European stadium show wearing a piece built exclusively for him. This wasn't handed off to an assistant designer. This wasn't pulled from a rack. This was a custom Dior look, designed under Anderson's direction, for one specific artist, for one specific night, on one of the biggest stages in music right now. And Jimin didn't just wear one outfit that night either. Throughout the Paris shows, he moved through multiple different Dior pieces across the performance, including a hoodie, a knit cardigan, and a tank top, each one part of the same custom Dior wardrobe built around him for this tour stop. That's not a single red carpet moment. That's an entire lookbook built for a concert by one of the most important designers working today. Now let's talk about the moment that pushed this from a fashion story into a full-blown global story, because this is the part that even non-K-pop fans could not ignore. During the performance of Dynamite, Jimin was on stage in a red Dior hoodie, and somewhere, watching that exact moment, was the president of France, Emmanuel Macron. And he didn't just watch it, he shared the image on his own Instagram. Let that sink in for a second. The president of France, one of the most powerful political figures in the world, took a moment out of his day to share an image of a K-pop idol wearing a custom, red Dior hoodie during a stadium concert. That is not something that happens to just any artist wearing just any brand. That is a signal of exactly how far Jimin's cultural reach has traveled, and exactly how seriously Dior's partnership with him is being taken at the highest levels. And it wasn't only Macron paying attention from the top. Dior's own global PR director, Peter Watts, was there in person at the concert. Think about that. This is someone whose job is to manage and protect the image of one of the most prestigious fashion houses in the world, and he made the decision to physically be in the building to witness this collaboration play out live, in front of tens of thousands of fans on a stadium stage. Executives at that level don't attend events casually. Every appearance is calculated. Every presence is a signal to the rest of the industry about what the brand considers important. And what Dior considered important enough to send its global PR director to witness in person was Jimin, on stage, wearing a design their own creative director built for him. That is the level of importance Dior placed on this moment. Put yourself in the room for a second. You have a French head of state paying attention from outside the stadium, a Dior executive watching from inside it, and tens of thousands of fans in the stands, all converging on the same 15 seconds of a K-pop performance. That is not something a PR team can manufacture with a press release. That kind of attention has to be earned, and it has to come from years of genuine cultural relevance building up to exactly this moment. Now, if you're thinking Jimin was the only member getting the fashion house treatment in Paris, that's actually part of what makes this story even bigger. This wasn't just about Jimin, it was about how each member of BTS became a walking runway for a different luxury house during their 2 nights at Stade de France. Jungkook stepped out in an entire series of custom Balenciaga looks with different outfit changes spanning both nights. V was dressed by Celine. So for these 2 nights in Paris, you essentially had 3 of the biggest fashion houses on the planet, Dior, Balenciaga, and Celine, each dressing a different member of BTS, live, on one of the largest stages in Europe. That is not a coincidence. That is the fashion industry telling you, loud and clear, exactly how much cultural weight this group carries right now. But here's why Jimin's story specifically deserves its own spotlight, and why this moment in Paris didn't come out of nowhere. Jimin's relationship with Dior isn't new, and it isn't shallow. He holds the position of Dior's global ambassador, and he made history as the brand's first male Asian global ambassador. That title alone tells you this partnership was built over time, with intention, not slapped together for one tour stop. And just weeks before this Paris concert, Jimin had already made headlines at the Dior Men's Summer 2027 collection show, also held in Paris, where fashion media named him one of the best-dressed attendees. At that event, he wore an embroidered jacket that reinterpreted 18th century attire, paired with denim and long, layered hair, a look that blended centuries of fashion history with something completely modern. So by the time he stepped onto the Stade de France stage in a Jonathan Anderson custom design, this wasn't a random collaboration. It was the continuation of a relationship that Dior has clearly been building around Jimin as a serious, long-term ambassador, not just a temporary celebrity face. Let's slow down for a second and really appreciate the timeline here, because it tells its own story. Jimin attends Dior's Summer 2027 show in Paris and gets named one of the best dressed there. Weeks later, he's back in Paris, this time on stage in front of a sold-out stadium, wearing a custom design from the same house's creative director. 2 different stages, same city, same brand, same growing partnership, escalating in scale each time. If you're tracking Jimin's fashion journey, this is the moment where it stops being K-pop idol wears designer clothes and becomes Major fashion house builds custom pieces around this specific artist as part of an ongoing creative relationship. That's an entirely different tier. And I want you to think about the layers of what's actually happening in that one single image of Jimin in the red Dior hoodie during Dynamite. You have a K-pop artist performing in one of Korea's most iconic songs on a European stadium stage, wearing a custom design from a French luxury house's creative director, in a moment significant enough that it got reposted by the president of that same country. Music, fashion, and international politics all intersecting in a single frame. That is an incredibly rare convergence, and it's exactly why the story traveled so far beyond the usual K-pop fan spaces. Now, some of you watching might be wondering, does Jonathan Anderson usually do this kind of custom work for musicians on tour? And the honest answer is, this level of hands-on custom design for a live stadium performance is not something handed out casually. Creative directors at this level are managing entire seasonal collections, runway shows, and the overall creative direction of a global brand. Choosing to build something specifically for a concert appearance, for one artist, says a lot about how Dior views this partnership with Jimin, not as one-off promotion, but as something worth investing real creative resources into. Let's also talk about why this matters so much for how the world is starting to see BTS as a whole. For years, BTS has been closely tied to the fashion world through individual brand deals, magazine covers, and appearances at shows. But what happened across these 2 nights in Paris feels like a shift into something bigger. This wasn't members attending shows separately on their own schedules. This was 3 different luxury houses actively building custom wardrobes around 3 different members, specifically for a single tour stop, timed perfectly around BTS's biggest European stadium moment. That is coordinated, high-level brand investment, and it tells you that the fashion industry isn't just watching BTS from a distance anymore. They are actively building around them. If you're an ARMY who has followed Jimin's fashion journey for years, from his early appearances at Dior shows all the way to becoming their first male Asian global ambassador, this moment in Paris probably feels like a culmination. Years of relationship building between Jimin and Dior led directly to this. A custom piece from the house's creative director, worn on one of the biggest stages of his career, in a city that has always had a special place in fashion history. And if you're someone who came to this video because you saw the headlines about the French president reposting a K-pop idol's outfit, and you're not deeply familiar with BTS or Jimin yet, I want you to understand something. This is not an isolated viral moment. This is the visible tip of years of consistent work, consistent artistry, and consistent cultural influence that Jimin and BTS as a whole have built, show after show, tour after tour, city after city. What you saw in that clip is the result of a long story, not a lucky coincidence. So where does this go from here? BTS is continuing to move through the rest of their ARIRANG World Tour, and if the Paris stop is any indication, the connections between this group and the biggest names in global fashion are only getting deeper. Every stadium they fill becomes another stage where music, culture, and high fashion collide in ways that reach far beyond their existing fan base. And Jimin, specifically, seems to be positioned right at the center of that intersection, as an artist that one of the most respected creative directors in the world is willing to build custom, one-of-one pieces around. Before we wrap up, I want to know what you think. Was this the biggest fashion moment of BTS's entire European tour so far? Or do you think there's something even bigger still coming as this tour continues? Drop your thoughts down in the comments, because I genuinely want to see this discussion play out. Tell me which moment from this tour hit you the hardest: the Macron repost, the Jonathan Anderson custom design, or the fact that 3 different luxury houses were dressing 3 different members on the same 2 nights. I read every single comment, and I want to know exactly which part of the story surprised you the most. And if this video gave you the full picture of what actually happened in Paris, do me a favor and hit that like button. It genuinely helps this channel reach more people who deserve to see the real story, not just a clipped headline scrolling past on their feed. YouTube pays attention to that engagement in the first few minutes after a video goes up, so if you're watching this early, that like button matters more than you think. If you're new here, this is exactly the kind of breakdown we do on this channel, taking the biggest BTS moments and giving you the actual context behind them, not just the surface-level headline everyone else is copying and pasting. We go past the viral clip and into the actual story, the timeline, the relationships, and the reasons why these moments matter as much as they do. So subscribe now and turn on notifications, because with this tour still going and more countries left to go, there are going to be more moments just like this one, and you do not want to miss them the moment they happen. One more thing before you go. Somewhere out there is a photo of Jimin trying on this exact custom Dior look backstage before he ever stepped onto that stage in front of the crowd. A quiet moment before the world saw the final result, before Macron ever hit repost, before Peter Woods ever took his seat in that stadium. Just Jimin, the outfit, and the mirror. And honestly, that backstage version might be just as fascinating as the performance itself, because it's the moment right before everything changed, the calm right before an entire stadium and an entire fashion industry turned their attention toward him. If you want to see that story broken down next, the story of what happens in the minutes before Jimin walks out under those lights, let me know in the comments, and I'll make sure it's the next video on this channel. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. This channel exists because of viewers like you who care about getting the real story, not just the headline. Every video we make is built the same way. Dig past the viral moment, find the actual context, and give you something worth your time. So subscribe, hit that bell, and I will see you in the next video, where we keep tracking BTS's biggest moments as they happen, in real time, with the full story every single time.